Hello everybody. This is a video on creating an ER diagram from a database description. It's going to be a simple description. It's not going to be anything elaborate. What I wanted to do is demonstrate how to create an ER diagram. The model kind of looks like a flowchart from a database description. Now the database description is basically notes you've taken from a client or maybe the company you work for, and they're kind of describing the database to you. So what you want to do is obviously take notes, and then from there you can decipher what are the entities or subjects of the database and what the database is going to store and the relationships between these databases. So as you see right here, I've created a very simple database. It's going to have three entities or three items that it's going to mainly store. One of the entities is going to be a photographer. The second entity is a photo. And the third entity is a photo server. Now, each entity has attributes, or basically things that make up the entity. They can describe, or actually, those are the things that distinguish or actually make the entity what it is. So as you see, photographer, we're going to have our photographer ID. And in this case, the photographer ID is a primary key. That means it's going to be unique. And it's going to have a name. You'll notice there's a parentheses, first name and last name, and I'll go over what that is. What that is a multi-valued attribute, and I'll show you how to put that into the diagram. The next is the entity is a photo. It's going to have a photo ID. Once again, that's the primary key, unique number there. The photo is going to have a type, it's going to have a resolution, and it's going to have a date, the date that the photo was taken. The next entity is the photo server. It's going to have a server ID, it's going to have an IP address, and it's going to have a size. Now you might be thinking the IP address could be unique, and it probably could, but I'm going to keep it a server ID because maybe the IP address could change later. So instead of having the IP address as a primary key, I'm going to make the server ID the primary key for this entity. Now when you talk to a client or your company or you're ready to get your database, you'll get the entities and the attributes, but there's got to be a relationship between these entities. And they're going to hopefully describe that to you, and then you're going to take it and kind of get into a little more detail about it and how they kind of work together. And that's kind of the database is. The database is simply full of entities that have attributes that make up the entity and how their relationship corresponds with each other. In this case, the relationship is quite simple. Photographer must take one or more photos. Photos must be taken by one photographer, and the photos must be stored in one server, and the server must store one or more photos. It's pretty common sense. It's really not too hard to decipher those notes. So as you can see, there's a relationship between these entities, and that's how the database is made, and then that's how you query the database. You're going to look at the relationship between these entities, and that's how you're going to query the data that you're wanting. What we're going to use today is Visio 2013, and we're going to use Chen's database notation. There's other types of notations there, but Chen's database is the one I know. And as you see, there's three shapes or symbols. You have the entity, which is a rectangle. You have a diamond, which denotes relationship. You have an attribute, which is an oval and a line, and then a relationship connector. These four shapes are really all you need for the Chen's database notation. There's some others, but this is basically your basic set, and from there you can expand on that. So what I like to do is go ahead and identify the entities and go ahead and put those shapes right into the blank slate. So as you know, I've got three entities. One is photographer, one is a photo, and the other one's a photo server. And I want to space them out a little bit so I have room for the relationship symbol. And I'm going ahead and put photographer. And I'm going to make that a little big. So I'm going to go ahead and make that, let's make it 16. Next one, I'm just going to put photo. And once again, I'm just going to make that 16 as well. And the last one will be the photo server. And let's go and make that 16 so we can read that a little bit better. Okay, once we've done that, we have our 3 entities. The next thing I like to do is go and put in the relationships. Relationships are denoted with a diamond shape. As you know right here, there is the relationship grammar, and we can kind of look at this grammar and kind of take from it that we have 2 relationships, and I'll explain those as I put them. So we're going to have one relationship here, and as you know right here, photographer must take 1 or more photos, photos must be taken 1 photographer. You'll notice there's a common take and taken between these 2 sentences, and that's what I'm going to put here. Just going to put takes, and I'm going to make this, actually I'll make that 14. Let me just put that little 14 right there. Then I'm going to create another relationship right here. And I'm going to look at a relationship between photos and the server. And as you see right here, there's 2 common words right here, stored and store. So that's the name of the relationship. I'm just going to put stored right there. Okay. So as you see right here, photographer must take 1 or more photos. So photographer takes 1 or more photos. Photos must be taken by 1 photographer. Photos must be taken or takes by a photographer. And then the third is photos must be stored in 1 server. So photos stored in a photo server. And then the server must store 1 or more photos. So photo server stores 1 or more photos. So this relationship right here, it's pretty easy. As you see, we have 3 entities and 2 relationships, but then we have to connect them. And how we do that is with a relationship connector. So let's go and put a line out here. And I'm going to go ahead and connect these. And I know that takes and photo is going to be connected. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And as from the relationship grammar, I know that photo and photo server are connected by store. So go ahead, put the connector there. And the last connector goes right here. So as you see now, we have the connection where the photographer is connected to the photo by the relationship takes. The photo is then connected to the photo server, and it is by stored. And I forgot to change that to 14, so let me go and put that to 14. Alright, but there's more to this. Obviously, you'll see more words here. Must take 1 or more photos. Must be taken by 1 photographer. Photos must be stored. These actually mean something. And these lines actually have to take a different, not a shape, but a single or double line. Now, when a line is double line, that means must. It must happen. If it's a single line, that means it may happen. So as you see right here, photographer must take 1 or more photos. This should be a double line. So what I'm going to do is click on it, and you see right here you're going to have from format shapes. I'm going to use a compound type, and what I'm going to do is make it a double. See right here, make it a double, and I'm going to increase the width, and that's how you get a double line in Visio. So there's a double line. So that denotes must take. Photographer must take. Okay. Now let's go the other way. Photos must be taken by 1 photographer. So once again, this line right here, since it's must be a double line. Click on double line, and I'll make it a 3. Let me see what this one is. I'll make this one a 3 as well. Okay, So here we have photographer must take photo. Photo must be taken by photographer. Good, so we have that so far. Now let's go on to these two relationship connectors. Now in this one, photo and stored, photos must be stored in one server. So once again, must is in here. So we're going to click on that. Oops. And once again, double line for must. And we'll make that a 3 to make it a double line. And same here, server must store one or more photos. So click the line, make that a double, and make that a 3 point, and that works fine. Now, if this one, if instead of must, let's say photos may be stored in one server, may would be a single line. In this case, we have all the relationship connectors are a must. That means it must happen, so we've got to make it a double line. So remember, if it's, for instance, photos may be stored in one server, that would be a single line. So we would just left that single line. But in this case, the grammar denotes that it must happen, and that means a double line. Okay, the next aspect of the ER diagram is the one or more photos, one photographer. You'll notice this is one or more or one. And how we're going to interpret that is basically we're going to put a 1 or M, and I'm going to show you how this works. Photographer must take one photo. So this is how you read an ER diagram. Photographer must take one or more photos. So right here there's got to be a one or more symbol. And how we do that is a simple M, or it could be an N, either one. I'm just going to leave it as an M, and that may be hard to see, so I'm going to increase that to a 12. So here, the first relationship grammar sentence, we actually have it complete. Once again, photographer must take one or more photos. So photographer must, the photographer being the entity, must being the double line relationship connector, take, or takes, in this case we just named it takes, one or more photos. So M is one or more. So it's one or more photos. Okay, you notice that this double line right here is not in a play, and that's accurate. This line right here does not come in play, but this is how you read the ER diagram. Once again, go over the grammar. Photographer must take one or more, I'm looking at the M, one or more photos. That's how you read the ER diagram. Okay, the next sentence. Photos must be taken by one photographer. So now we're going to reverse. Photo must, double line, be taken, or takes, by one photographer. So there should be a 1 right here, and we'll put that as a 1. And we'll make that as a 1. Okay, so now we have the two top sentences right here, relationship grammar sentences complete, and they're located right here. Photographer must take one or more photos. Photos must be taken by one photographer. So that's complete. So let's go to the third sentence, relationship grammar. Photos must be stored in one server. So once again, photo must be, double line, stored in one server. So this right here needs to have a 1, and I'll make that 12 point. Okay, then our fourth relationship grammar sentence is server must store one or more photos. So right here, photo server, or server, must, double line, store one or more photos, and one or more is denoted by M or an N, and I'll just choose an M. Okay. Now, one thing I've noticed on the diagrams is whenever you have, let's say there's an M here and an M here, typically what happens is you make one an N. N would be located here and M would be here, or vice versa. So that's when an N can be used. I usually start with an M. If there needs to be another one or more, I just make it an N. Simple as that. Okay, so let's see if our relationship grammar is complete. Photographer must take one or more photos. M stands for one or more photos. Photos must be, double line, taken by one photographer. Third sentence, photos must be, double line, stored in one photo server. Remember, this line does not come into play in sentence number 3. Server must, double line, store one or more photos. So that actually satisfies the relationship grammar. And so we've taken the entities, the relationship, and the relationship connector. But there's one more thing we need to add, and that's the attributes. Each entity has a certain amount of attributes that we have to note. Attributes are denoted with an oval and a line. So what we're going to do now is start creating our attributes, and the first one is photographer ID. And I think I need to make that, let's make it a 12. I'll make that larger so we can read that. And all you have to do with Visio, simply take the connectors and attach. Okay. Now in this case, photographer ID I know is the primary key. It's underlined. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's underlined here. So in Visio, all you have to do is right click, set primary key, and it's underlined here. So whenever somebody's looking at your ER diagram, they know that the photographer entity does have an attribute with the primary key of photographer ID. So let's go ahead and add the other attributes. And name. And I'm going to attach it down here. I'll show you why in a second. And then the next attribute. Actually, that is all the attributes. I'm going to get rid of that one. And this is what I was alluding to. Now, name right here is actually an attribute that can be subdivided into two more attributes. And so what we're going to do right here, since this attribute has its own attributes, we'll go ahead and add attributes to the name attribute. So first, name, and we'll attach it there. And I'll slide this one in here. Last, name. And we'll attach that one there. So this denotes on the database diagram, it tells you one or two things. The database designer can look at this and say, you know what, we can go with name and not worry about first name and last name, or the option is there. Name could actually be subdivided into first name and last name. So the option is either or. It could be later on that you decide, you know what, I'm going to drop the first name and last name, we're just going to put name. Or the diagram says there's an option. You can actually subdivide name into first name and last name. The decision must be made eventually, but for now, the diagram is saying, hey, let's go and subdivide name into first name or last name. Okay, so now we've added the attribute photographer. We'll add the attributes to photo. And that is photo ID. I think I'll make that a 12. Connect it. And like I said before, set primary key since that is the unique key. Set another attribute, and that is type. Go ahead and connect that relation there. or the attribute. The next attribute is the date. Connect that one there. We'll make that a 12. We'll make that a 12. So right there we have photo with 3 attributes. Photo ID, it has a type, it has a date, oops, and I forgot one more, and that would be resolution. And we'll make that a 12. There. Okay, 4 attributes for the photo entity: photo ID, resolution, type, and date. In our last entity, it has 3 attributes. So we'll click on that and have server ID. Click on that, make that a 12, just for readability. Right click it, and you'll see where it says set primary key. It's underlined. Let's go ahead and add the next one, which is IP address. Connect that one to the photo server ID. And the last attribute will be size. Make that a 12. And we'll go ahead and connect that. Okay. This is actually the ER diagram complete, but Visio has some neat styles that you can change to make it a little more readable, I guess is the word. So what I'm going to do is just control click these entities, and you can actually change the styles if you want to, you know, any colors you want or so forth. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to look at the fill, and I'm just going to change it to maybe not so bright. Yeah, I guess we can do orange. And let's say relationship, and let's look at the fill, and we'll make that, let's see here, we'll make that a brown. And you can do this with the attributes. For instance, the the subdivided attributes here, we can go ahead and use different lines and different fields to kind of denote that that is a subdivided attribute. Wow, that didn't work out so well. Let's make it a little darker. So that can tell the reader the diagram that, hey, these 2 colors right here, the brown, means subdivided attributes, so the option is there. And we'll just leave the attributes to blue. So when a database designer or somebody comes and who knows how to read an ER diagram, they look at this, it's a quick reference and a great way to visually look on how the database is constructed. So they would, in essence, look at this ER diagram. Entity relationship, by the way, is what ER diagram stands for. And they can decipher how this database is constructed, basically the schema. The schema is how this ER is constructed. And of course, the ER diagram is created by the database description. And like I said before, database description is how you get your notes, and is a way to show your client how the database is going to work, how it's going to be constructed, and if it's accurate. So that way with your client or your company, you can give these documents back, visually submit them to make sure you both are on the same page. Or even if you needed to visually take a look at it, maybe later you want to change that database, this is a very good modeling tool to where you can take a quick look and say, you know what, I need to change this, the entity's not correct, or maybe there's some feedback that needs to be corrected. So once again, this is creating an ER diagram, entity relationship diagram, from a database description using Visio. This one's Visio 2013, very good tool. You can use other software versions too that have the Chen database notation, but this one is the one I use. Thanks a lot.